Lu Sheng began to harness his power, and soon a powerful golden energy radiated from his body. Tan Fei and the man immediately sensed this energy, their focus turning to him. Tan Fei gritted her teeth and stared at Lu Sheng, panic rising in her eyes as she realized he was preparing to strike. The man tightened his fists, glanced at her, and with a serious look, insisted that there were very few true deities in Longo, claiming that Lu Sheng was merely a fraud. He believed that if they both fought with all their might, they might have a chance to defeat him. Tan Fei began to sweat profusely as she observed Lu Sheng, finding herself agreeing with the man's assessment. Considering they were two of the 10 strongest demons, she believed that if they combined their strength, they wouldn't be outmatched by opponents from Long Yupo who weren't even martial saints. The two of them started channeling all their power, their eyes glowing brightly as bursts of fire erupted around their bodies. They determined it was time to launch their attack. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng hovered silently in the sky, observing them. Tan Fei glared up at him, took a deep breath, and as she charged her attack, accused Lu Sheng of being a fraud who relied on tricks and deceit, commanding him to die. She unleashed her power known as Abyss Flames, sending a massive wave of fire hurtling toward Lu Sheng. At the same time, the werewolf leapt into the flames, his body completely engulfed in fire. He lunged at Lu Sheng, extending his claws with fierce determination and executing his technique, Blazing Flame Strike. At first, Lu Sheng just watched the man silently. Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and mocked the werewolf, calling him a brute with weak movements. Just as the werewolf was about to strike, Lu Sheng exhaled a powerful gust of fire from his mouth, hitting the man directly and sending him flying backward. Lu Sheng's power began to weaken Tan's flames until they started fading away. The werewolf's eyes filled with confusion. He couldn't understand how this was possible. Tan's fire was strong enough to burn demons, yet Lu Sheng had dispersed it with just one breath. Soon after, a purple energy surrounded the man's body, freezing him in place. His eyes filled with fear and tension as he quickly realized this was psychic power, confirming that Lu Sheng was a master of it. Staying calm, Lu Sheng reached out toward the man, forming a powerful, suffocating purple energy in his hand. He explained that this was divine power, then launched his attack, hitting the werewolf directly. The force of the blow started breaking the man's bones, making him scream in agony. As Lu Sheng kept using his power, every bone in the man's body began to shatter. Tan Fei, watching the scene, turned away, gritting her teeth in frustration and disbelief. She couldn't accept what was happening. She decided that running away was safer than facing someone like Lu Sheng. But before she could act, Lu Sheng moved with lightning speed, appearing beside her with a calm look. He revealed that he was not a demon. Sensing his presence, Tan Fei turned and saw him next to her. Shocked and filled with dread, she understood that this would not end well. Standing before her with a piercing gaze, Lu Sheng decided these barbarians deserved a punishment as severe as dismemberment. At the same time, a high-speed train sped through the landscape like a bullet. Guo Ying reached Lu Sheng's carriage, looking around in surprise, wondering where he had gone and why he hadn't come back. To her, this mission couldn't just end here. Just then, Lu Sheng reappeared, holding a roll of rope and looking at her with a pleasant expression, smiling as he asked if something had happened. She looked at him in slight confusion, realizing she hadn't seen him return. Lu Sheng rolled the rope into a ball, brought it close to his face, and with a smile explained that he had just finished a small sewing job. Hearing this, Guo Ying's mind filled with questions. She looked at him with a puzzled expression, asking what he meant. Lu Sheng simply looked away, gazing out the train window, and with a cheerful smile replied that she would soon understand. Not far from where the train tracks converged, a post stood in the middle, with the werewolf and Tan Fei tied to it. Moments later, both regained consciousness and began struggling to break free but couldn't. They didn't understand why they couldn't escape, wondering if the rope was made of gold. Looking ahead, Tan Fei and the werewolf's eyes filled with fear as they saw what was approaching. Two high-speed trains moving in opposite directions appeared on the tracks. Instead of hitting them, the trains zoomed past close by. But as they crossed, something happened. Lu Sheng, sitting in his seat on the train, extended his hand, surrounded by purple energy, deciding it was time to start the show. Activating his spiritual power, he caused the rope around Tan Fei's body to transform into energy. One end of the rope shot forward, binding itself to the front of the train. Seeing this, Tan Fei was left speechless, her eyes wide with terror. She couldn't believe the rope had moved on its own. As the train picked up speed, the rope grew tighter. Realizing what was about to happen, Tan Fei's eyes filled with panic, her mouth opening in shock. The force created by the two speeding trains pulling on the rope tore both Tan Fei and the werewolf apart, ending their lives instantly. Night had fallen, and the moon shone high in a starry sky. The force from the trains was so strong that their bodies were shredded to pieces. Lu Sheng clasped his hands, looked to the side, and with a distant gaze, thought that this was like a modern version of execution by dismemberment. He'd done this as a serious warning to the Lion Country, showing that anyone who dared to provoke him would face severe consequences. As he stood lost in thought, Guo Ying approached with one hand behind her back, saluted him with a serious expression, and reported that she'd heard a strange noise. She asked if he wanted her to call a helicopter to take them directly to Kyoto province for safety. Hearing her voice, Lu Sheng came out of his trance, observed her for a moment, and stayed silent for a few seconds. Then, he closed his eyes and replied with a calm smile that it wasn't necessary. Leaning his head slightly over the side of his seat, he pointed at her and casually mentioned that 2 people had died where the 2 trains crossed, asking her to remember to send someone to clean up the area. Though a bit confused, Guo Ying responded with a quick, "Understood." Meanwhile, at the Black Magic Society headquarters, Jay collapsed to the ground in shock, staring at a screen that showed photos of Tan Fei and the werewolf, both marked with warning symbols indicating they were dead. Horrified, he noticed that the life signs of demons number 6 and 7 had vanished. Behind him, a woman in a red dress looked at the screen, her face tense with panic. She recalled that the 10 lords of the demon pillars were nearly divine beings, each one controlling a beast of immense power. Their immense strength had been the foundation of the society's success. Jay's face was drenched in sweat, and terror filled his eyes as he realized that 3 of the great demons had fallen within a single day. He wondered if Longo had deployed a saint-level warrior. But the woman, equally panicked and bewildered, dismissed this theory, explaining that the 3 great martial saints had no solid connection to the target, and the army lacked any martial saints. This left only one chilling possibility. They had severely underestimated their opponent. Lu Sheng wasn't merely a high-ranking fighter. He possessed the strength of a martial saint. Jay's expression shifted as he processed this revelation. He could hardly believe that Lu Sheng, at only 20 years old, had attained the level of a martial saint, a feat that shattered all expectations. Lu Sheng was a prodigy in martial arts. Overwhelmed with despair, Jay realized he was at a loss for what to do next. With 3 of the top 10 demon pillars gone, even if they managed to succeed in the mission, it wouldn't make up for such heavy losses. He began to think that calling off the mission might be the only sensible choice. The woman pointed at the screen, telling Jay that it was better to accept their current losses than abandon the mission, because if they didn't eliminate Lu Sheng now, They had no assurance he wouldn't come after them in the future. Jay, sweating and confused, turned to her, asking if they should contact the organization immediately for reinforcements. The woman clenched her fists, a golden aura surrounding her, and with renewed confidence, she assured him there was no need. They still had demon number 4, Sakina, whose strength would surely be enough to finish off Lu Sheng. Frustrated, Jay pointed out that the organization hadn't given them Sakina's contact information. The woman then clasped her hands and fell to her knees, saying they didn't need to reach out because Sakina had always been with them. Confused, Jay watched as she began chanting for the 4th pillar of the demon, Sakina. Moments later, she collapsed, and to Jay's horror, a hand emerged from her mouth. He stood in shock as a drooling head followed, soon revealing a blonde woman named Samandina, causing the woman's head to burst open. Samandina landed gracefully in front of the screen and approached Jay, who dropped to his knees in fear. With a distinctive tattoo on her leg, she calmly demanded the target's coordinates. Paralyzed with terror, Jay hesitated, watching as a golden aura enveloped her. She repeated her command, firmly ordering him to provide the target's location. And that's it for this part of the story. If you're excited to find out what happens next, make sure to subscribe and like the video.